Knock at the Cabin! Okay, we're doing Shyamalan again. You may remember my work with his work with such classics like Old, which I still maintain is possibly one of the best videos I've ever made. I even go over the absolutely wild graphic novel for extra goodies. But overall, I would say that I'm a fan of Shyamalan because even when he's bad, it's usually in an interesting or funny way. But I just don't think I can say the same about Knock at the Cabin. I know there's a lot of people really loving this one, there's definitely a lot to appreciate, but by the end, I just really struggle for understanding why it exists the way that it played out. Honestly, feels really gross at times. And I really feel like I understand what it's going for and normally appreciate stories like that, but I kind of hate it. It's based on the novel The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, and it's getting a lot of mixed reviews, but I find myself not agreeing with either side of the reviews. People are saying it's his best movie, which is a ridiculous statement, and other people are saying it's his worst movie, which is also a ridiculous statement. Certainly on the lower side for me with something that has a lot of quality in certain areas and then just falls so short in the story aspects. I will say that a lot of the film work and the craft is really strong with this one. There's a lot of these really tight, unsettling close-ups on certain characters' faces. Interesting shots and pans and framing. I think it starts off really tense in a really strong way, but then for me at least, a lot of the tension just completely dissipates. But I don't even know how to talk about this movie without spoiling it, and if you've seen the most recent trailer, you've already seen the movie. I hadn't even seen it going in and just knew the general premise, and if somebody had asked, hey, what do you think the most obvious direction this movie could go? And I had explained it to them, that would have been the movie. So as usual, I turned to the book to see if there was anything to make the experience more nuanced or interesting, but Shyamalan pitches the intended story off a cliff to just make his own. To the extent that I'm left wondering, why didn't he just make his own story? Because they don't merge well at all. He completely changes the ending and its intentions. The book is very ambiguous at just about every turn, but I do end up enjoying what its ending does more, versus Shyamalan turning it into another exploration of spirituality and faith and the idea of sacrifice being the ultimate act of good. I've honestly really liked Shyamalan's exploration of these ideas in the past, and I think the sincerity in this movie is clear, but the scenario it's explored in makes it just feel gross and weird. I think Bautista did a really great job bringing Leonard to life. If you read the book, there's a very specific cancer to his dialogue and vulnerability that Bautista really nailed. And then I find that Ben Aldridge really just carried so much of the rest of this movie on his back, and then Rupert Grint did exactly what he needed to do, and he was really good at it. But outside of that, I was just terribly frustrated by this movie. We'll go into details in a little bit, but in honor of the latest Shyamalan cameo appearance, today's sponsor is HelloFresh. So after finishing up at a film festival in a frozen tundra only to return to another frozen tundra, the last thing I wanted to think about was groceries and meal prep. So when I walked up to my door and saw that HelloFresh box waiting, I was relieved. Instead of wasting time venturing into negative 40-degree weather to find food, I had 3 unique meals with everything I needed to make them right at my door. HelloFresh makes cooking easy by offering up 40 weekly recipes to choose from, meaning you can always try something new and exciting, or design your meals around what matters to you. Maybe you're looking for carb or calorie smart. Maybe you're trying to introduce some more vegetarian meals into your diet. Time management is where I'm struggling the most, so I'm going right for those quick meals. But even those quick meals don't sacrifice on taste and quality. And the best part, everything you need comes in that box with convenient step-by-step instructions that even an idiot like me can follow. Whether you're cooking for yourself, family, friends, HelloFresh has you covered. So make sure to go to HelloFresh.com and use code JEDI65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's code JEDI65 at HelloFresh.com for 65% off plus free shipping. So Knock at the Cabin, if you've seen any amount of trailer, you know what this movie is, but if you haven't and you still have interest in watching this movie, I would probably recommend doing that first, because once we get into it, there is just really no avoiding spoilers. If you don't know what it's about and still want to be here, Knock at the Cabin tells the story of a gay couple and their adopted daughter taking a vacation to an isolated cabin in the woods, only to have their relaxation destroyed by a group of intruders claiming to have seen the apocalypse, and the only way to stop it is for someone from the family to willingly sacrifice themselves.
We're not choosing anyone. We're not sacrificing anyone.
The fact that they're gay isn't supposed to play into the story as any kind of central focal point, but it's impossible to engage with the story without taking that into account. But at face value, it's just kind of hey, see, they're a real family, just like the normals. Which is probably what plays into so much of the ending just feeling really weird to me, but we'll get to it. Now, before Shyamalan just takes the whole thing in its own direction, the movie is almost identical to the book. Bautista's Leonard is the first to appear and speaks to the daughter Wen. He's kind, interested, just catching grasshoppers with her, which definitely unlocked some childhood memories. Like, why did anybody let us do that? But the tension settles in as the other intruders slowly appear through the woods. Then the dads realizing that they're not just normal door-to-door religious nutters and have some pretty horrifying homemade weapons on them. Desperately trying to block off doors after they realize they've cut the phone lines and that they have no reception on their cell phones. Knowing that nothing they can do can stop these people from getting in, it's super tense, very effective. And soon, just like those grasshoppers in a jar, the family is going to be stuck in that cabin waiting for some kind of death. John Groff Christoph ends up concussed trying to fight Sabrina here, which plays a big part in the ambiguity going forward and the reliability of certain characters. He's Daddy Eric, but the temptation to refer to them as concussed and non-concussed dad is just very high for me. They obviously all make it in, but not before Andrew just lays down an ass whooping on Ron Weasley that was just so satisfying because while they are all intruders, he's a particular asshole. Rupert seems like such a nice, goofy lad. He's really acting his ass off here with a Boston accent. His name is Redmond, which I thought was hilarious given the fact that he has red hair and a red shirt, and Bautista has a white shirt, again named Leonard, Adrienne with the black shirt, and Sabrina with the yellow shirt. Let me know if you also immediately caught what they were going for here. 4 intruders, those specific colors. Gonna specify that the yellow shirt was described as pale in the book. But once Eric goes down, Andrew won't leave him, so they all end up tied to chairs where the specific rules of this apocalypse are explained. These 4 have been chosen to prevent the apocalypse, and for whatever reason they were sent to this specific cabin with the knowledge that whoever was inside was gonna have to sacrifice one of their own to prevent the end of the world. Which entails oceans rising like fists to sweep the cities out to sea, a plague that would fill the lungs with mucus and spread amongst the land. The sky would fall and shatter like glass upon the earth before the world was plunged into eternal darkness. You know, the huge. Now, I'm sure a lot of that is going to sound similar to things that are happening right now, but that is kind of the point. At any given moment, a lot of things happening in the world seem like a genuine apocalypse doomsday scenario. And at some day our luck is probably going to run out, but this kind of stuff has been going on for about as long as we've existed as a species. We just really seem to be helping it along right now. But that idea of us kind of helping things along seems like an aspect that this movie is looking to examine. I just really hate how they did it. And I'm fine with stories exploring how people being better can make the world better, how for all our flaws as a species, I think we can still believe the best of us. But again, broken record, hate how the movie handles it. Regardless, the rules are specifically that it has to be a willing sacrifice, the intruders can't make the choice for the family, they can't do the sacrifice for them, and they can't seriously injure them. The concussion was just a whoopsie. Oh, and they also can't sacrifice themselves. One of the other members of the family will literally have to kill a loved one. Super fucked. So you might be wondering, why the massive weapons if they're not allowed to use them? Well, they are. When they obviously say no the first time, Redmond suddenly putting his weapon down and getting on his knees, and I instantly caught, oh, if they don't make a choice, one of these people dies. And yeah, he pulls a white mask over his face, says a part of humanity has been judged, and they are just stabbing him in the head. It's very not graphic in the movie. They truly made this the most PG-13 friendly horror adjacent movie. Book description's way more graphic. Either way, he's dead. Sorry, Rupert Grint fans. The part of humanity has been judged thing doesn't happen in the book. He actually just says thank you before they sacrifice him. But that all really pulled attention for me because now we know that as long as the intruders are honest, the family just has to wait for these people to take themselves out. Like, yeah, I'm sure they'd rather not witness people kill themselves in front of them, and if it's a shared delusion, who knows what they'll end up doing, but still, I felt that they were being sincere in their mission. And the other obvious piece, whether it's true or not, is that they believe every time one of them is sacrificed, a plague is unleashed on humanity. The first thing they do is turn on the TV to reports of an earthquake near Hawaii that kind of set off a tsunami, except it happened 4 hours ago and no one was hurt. But then as they're watching, that original earthquake triggered one off the coast of Oregon, causing a massive tsunami. Hey, while working on this video, a massive earthquake struck Turkey. There's been a ton of devastation and deaths. I'm going to be making a donation, and I'll have some links below for places to donate if you're able to help some organizations on the ground. But Andrew is not convinced. The scientists specifically say that they've been waiting for an earthquake in that spot to happen for years, and the original one is what triggered it, so how could their actions have affected that when it was already in motion? But Eric might be struggling a little bit more. Again, he's concussed, and as they were all gearing up to kill Redmond, he saw some kind of figure in the light reflecting against the mirror or a window. Something he's sure is the result of the concussion, but the more he thinks about it, the more he thinks he felt that an entity was in there with them. But my first thought was like, hey, gee, guys, if you really think that like sacrificing yourselves is causing these plagues, maybe just like don't. But the book makes it really clear that they feel absolutely compelled to do it. The person who's dying knows it's their time, and it just turns into this ritual they can't stop themselves from performing. And that's something that's been happening to them the entire time. I guess Sabrina tried not coming, but then woke up in a cab on the way to the airport. And that idea of compulsion here is actually terrifying, and in the book it opened up an interesting avenue of the things people feel compelled to do and uphold because of shitty existing beliefs. But we're still in ambiguity. Things like that happen around the world all the time, so is this really happening, or is it a coincidence? I know ambiguity annoys a lot of people, and oftentimes I am one of those people, but in this story, I think it really works. Where I think this movie starts to lose it is when that ambiguity just goes out the window because it's the most tense thing we have to work with. I don't even think the book stays as ambiguous as it could. But not long after Redmond dies, Andrew realizes that he's the man that hate crimed him at a bar by bashing him over the head with a beer bottle. Seeing as Redmond openly said in his introduction that he did time in prison, it kind of tracks that it was likely him. So as much as the group say this whole thing has nothing to do with them being gay, they had no idea who they were gonna find there, Andrew is rightfully suspicious. I know there's a lot of questions as to why a straight author would make this family gay if it wasn't supposed to be for a thing, but Tremblay just said there's supposed to be the amalgamation of his gay aunt and cousin, who were some of the most supportive early readers he had, so he just wanted to find a way to honor them and their relationships, and just really display what so much of the world sees as atypical as typical, which I do enjoy, but obviously the fact that they're gay will paint a lot of the perception of this story, and honestly adds a lot of weight to the movie, specifically that I don't think the movie handles well. So Andrew's even more skeptical than he already was. The group is pretty shocked to hear that Redmond was likely a fake name, fucking stretch of the brain cells there, and he might actually be this O'Bannon person, a homophobe. Though I would like to point out that in the book his name is Jeff O'Bannon, and then for some reason the movie changed it to Rory O'Bannon, so you really know the red-headed person from Boston has Irish heritage? The movie will go on to confirm that it was actually him twice, but the book leaves it up to you to decide. But the rest of them maintain that they're just good, regular people, just like them, with no hate in their hearts. So they're quite shook to find that this other person wasn't as much like them as they thought, even though they're currently terrorizing a family. Then they start letting the little things slip, like how they all met on a message board, which just plays into Andrew's belief that this is some shared delusion on their part. But they maintain that the visions came first, independently. They're all from different areas, then they found each other, and Andrew obviously isn't having it. And that's fair, because even if they are all having visions, who's to say they're right? They even have a moment of conflict amongst themselves. Now the book clarifies that Leonard made the message board because the visions told him to, and the others found it that same night. They establish that they've all essentially had the same visions, but there's obviously the chance that they're influencing each other. Like they specifically note that Redmond, the gay basher, is the one who specifically knew where this cabin was from the visions, and he was the first one to see it. So then you're given that doubt of, hey, maybe this was some elaborate revenge against the gay couple that sent him to prison. Based on how things played out, I really don't think that's the case, but I can understand why that would be a concern. But new sacrifice time! Adrian is up next. In the book, she starts talking about cutting off their fingers to force them to make a choice because she doesn't want to die, but obviously that's against the rules. I do like that in the book, a lot of them come across more selfish. So she's sacrificed, they turn the TV back on, and there's a report talking about a respiratory virus that's super lethal in kids. But this one actually seems even less related. It is pre-scheduled programming. This is a virus that they've known about all year, and Andrew is positive that they knew that this segment was going to play at this time, which is why Leonard keeps checking his watch. Again, just towing the line of whether or not it's real. But Andrew and Eric end up breaking free. Andrew runs to get his gun from the SUV, ends up shooting Sabrina when she makes a run at him. And now there's just planes falling out of the sky all around the world. And that's the one where I was like, you know what? Maybe something's actually going on here. In the book, they specify that there's 7 confirmed crashes, but the movie just has them dropping like flies. They even show it in the trailer, which I thought was stupid and really gives away the fact that something is actually happening in the movie. But 7 is actually a super important reoccurring number in the book. There are 7 people total. Leonard knocks on the door 7 times. He specifically tells Wen that 7 isn't always lucky. And that's likely because in the Bible, there's 7 seals that would lead to the apocalypse in Revelations. So if it wasn't already obvious by these 4 being the bringers of the apocalypse and the colors of their shirts, they represent the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The movie's gonna spell this out for us later. I thought it was really obvious and didn't need it to be said, and I think that even if you didn't catch it, it would have been more interesting to realize after the fact. Trust your audiences, people. More on the horseman stuff later, because the question still remains, why this cabin? Why them specifically? It's something no one can answer. Oh wait, the movie does try to come up with an explanation.
I believe you were chosen because your family's love for each other is so pure.
Fuck off. And Andrew still doesn't give a shit. Planes crashing doesn't seem like the literal equivalent of the skies will fall to the earth like pieces of glass, even if it is weird as hell.
Move away from Eric or I'll show you I was chosen to put a bullet in your head.
Then next is this hilarious sequence of them locking Leonard in a bathroom instead of tying him up. Then they hear the window smash and worry that he broke out. But the window is this little circular thing that Dave Bautista couldn't possibly fit through. And he still slowly creeps at the shower with the gun. Yeah, he pops a shot, but there is obviously a brick house of a human behind that curtain. But all it really leads to is, again, Leonard telling them they have to make a choice before he slits his throat, saying that all of humanity has now been judged, but I guess they still have a couple minutes after this to make things right. The sky swirls darker, lightning starts to strike the trees, there's a plane falling behind them, seeming pretty apocalyptic, and Eric is now positive that it's real and knows it needs to be him. And it's this back and forth conversation between Eric and Andrew that just really started pissing me off. Talking about how maybe families have been deciding this kind of stuff all through time, that these intruders came here to spend time with them, to get to know them, and then drops the four horsemen thing, but with a twist. Instead of them representing war, famine, conquest / pestilence, depending on your reading, and death, they're all major aspects of humanity: malice, nurturing, healing, and guidance, all essentially flips on the original, except malice. And that's not in the book. I really think it was just originally supposed to be a fun little flip on the horseman, like the nurse is death, the chef is famine, the one looking to guide people is conquest, and war has his ass handed to him in the opening scene. It's not perfect, but it's something. And they ride in not with their color-coordinated horses, but shirts. Again, did we really need to spell it out like that? Then Eric says that they specifically had to feel their loss to understand the weight of what's happening. And that they have to make the sacrifice to be willing to give up something so beautiful for everyone else. Stupid. The only logical justification in this moment is, hey, if they're right, I don't want our daughter to grow up in a barren wasteland and then be completely alone once we die. Which is touched on, but then it's just surrounded by all the stupid stuff. It then does seem to veer into them being gay. Andrew pointing out that most of the people they'd be saving hate that they exist, hate their family. And Eric's response is just, oh, they're just scared, they don't understand. How about fuck off? If you wanted an exploration of altruism and sacrifice, this was not the way to do it. I get it. Eric believes he's accepted that he has a greater purpose than what he wanted. He's choosing it for the betterment of the people he loves and all humanity. But I hate it. I hate that it just keeps pushing Andrew further and further to the point that he's actively condemning all of humanity for the sake of his own unit. I get that he's supposed to represent how most of humanity would feel in this situation, the desire to protect and maintain what's ours in tough situations, and that Eric's the one that's choosing to be selfless and thinking outside of himself and how what matters to him will also thrive if the greater good thrives. But they're not supernatural adjacent representations of society at large and higher powers. They're just two people on a fucking vacation with their daughter, and the only sacrifice that matters to me is the one that they would make for her. Normally, I love stories that examine the human existence and ultimately come to the conclusion that we're worth it, that good people can and will make the hard choices. But the way this movie goes about it just feels wrong to me, which is rare when I can tell that someone's approached something with a degree of care and sincerity, but this whole scene is just terrible. And yeah, maybe I'm looking into it a little bit too much, but he's asking us to look into it too much. Maybe it's because the biggest problems that the world is facing isn't because of individuals. I feel like individuals are mostly good. But sometimes the best we can do is carve out our little happy spaces and places with the people that we love. It's kind of insulting to imply that an individual needs to make the grand sacrifice for all of humanity. Parental sacrifice is where this movie's story would be interesting, not the global scale. It felt wrong to me before I read the book, and it feels wrong to me after I read the book, which seems to exist for almost opposite reasons. So Eric convinces Andrew to kill him, which in turn becomes a sacrifice for Andrew. And the rain pours down, putting out the fires, the lightning and started, and presumably everything's okay. Planes are landing, water levels receding. Seems like he saved the world. I hate it. You can say that a lot of this is Andrew coming to terms with his own trauma and hate of the world outside his family because of the things that happened to him, but again, feels kind of gross. The movie then feels the need to 100% show that none of the intruders were lying about who they are as people, other than confirming for a second time that O'Bannon is actually O'Bannon. But why does it even matter? Oh, maybe it's like, hey, look what the world lost because you took so gosh darn long to make a choice. God, I hope it's not that. And then almost like a message from above, Boogie Shoes starts playing on the radio, the same song they were all listening to on the way up to the cabin. I wanna put on or is it just a coincidence? So that's the movie, but let's swing back and talk about that book ending I keep saying is so different. In the book, the only person properly sacrificed is Redmond. Adrian's the one who makes a run at Andrew when he has the gun and ends up shot, which leads to a scuffle over the gun between Leonard and Andrew, which causes the gun to go off and shoot Wen. Actually, come to think of it, that scene with Leonard in the bathroom, they probably added that in so that book readers would be like, oh my god, is it happening now? And if you're thinking, shit, that's one way to stop an apocalypse while still having your world shattered. No, it wasn't a willing sacrifice, so it doesn't count. But the way the book writes that passage out, haunting. He pops back upright and vigorously attempts to shake the gun free, yanking Andrew's arms up and down and side to side, and then Wen doesn't see or hear or feel anything anymore. Oh, that's heavy. Hate what happened, love how it was written. And this is where we get a really interesting chapter from Leonard's perspective, something the movie just can't provide us, and they clearly didn't want to go the direction of kid killing. But if they did, I really think that Bautista would have handled the physicality of the guilt so perfect in that moment. But no, we just had to go in the exact direction laid out in the beginning. Either way, Sabrina is still alive, and she's the one who poses the question, even if all of this is real, what god or higher power would ask of this? What god would deem the death of a child, intentional or not enough to save humanity? The one we have, says Leonard. So she's gonna fight off whatever's compelling her as long as possible to help Eric and Andrew leave. Regardless of the compulsion and the actions she knows she'll be forced to take, she makes the choice to do what she believes is right. And the compulsions still happen while Andrew is waiting for Eric to feel well enough to walk. She turns ritual killer and takes out Leonard. And not long after, when she's showing them where the truck keys are hidden, she's actively fighting the voice in her head telling her that it's her time to go. And the second they have the keys, she shoots herself as she's being forced to ask them to make the sacrifice while shaking her head no in disagreement. I much preferred that concept of people fighting off something they feel compelled to do or be, but also getting to be in their head to see how horrifying it would be to be in a position where you felt completely at the whims of something external to you. I love that you can engage with that both literally and figuratively, that you think you have no choice because of personal beliefs and then use that to wash yourself of responsibility. Way more interesting than the faith exercise we got in the movie. So Eric and Andrew have a semi-similar back and forth that they had in the movie, but ultimately decide to live on, because that's the point. Their world was destroyed the second that Wen died. So what does it matter if the apocalypse is happening or not? Why would they want to play into whatever higher power determined that her death wasn't enough? So instead, the choice they're left with is either acting out of fear of what might be happening or out of hope and love. So maybe this was the apocalypse. Maybe they could have saved the world, but they certainly weren't the ones to condemn it. And I can see that ending annoying a lot of people. I know a lot of people really hate that ending. I get wanting a more concrete ending to know one way or the other. I do kind of assume it was really happening based on the brief perspective we get from the intruders, and just like some of the stuff that was happening was really weird. But I like that the point is that it doesn't matter, and it's something that I like the more I think about it. Whereas the more I think about the movie, the more I just feel weird. And I'm not even like a fanboy. This is the first Tremblay book I've ever read. I'm not even like a huge fan of it. I do like a lot of the ideas that it introduced, but like my favorite chapters were the ones that were in Leonard and Sabrina's perspective. And I love Sabrina's defiance of it all because what was happening wasn't right, even if she believes it's real. Honestly, I think a story from their perspective would be really interesting, and I think his writing style would serve that really well. But that is Knock at the Cabin and how it compares to its source material, The Cabin at the End of the World. Clearly, I have a lot of thoughts. Also, clearly, I probably struggled to articulate a lot of those thoughts. Sometimes it really is just the feeling and vibes up here. I appreciate what Shyamalan was going for, would normally be on board, but I just walked away feeling really weird about the execution. And while I don't think the book is perfect, I do think it examined it in a way more interesting way. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. I have seen some beautifully moving interpretations on the positive side. I just end up disagreeing with fundamental aspects of those, but I do appreciate reading them. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring the video, and to all my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later. It's been a while since I've been able to do the double gun.